Guys, I did it again. I farmed way too much. Well, I guess I'll just explain what I did and why I did it. Anyways, let's get started. I started off... Well, here, let's talk about the daily challenge first. It's called Don't Trust the Monkeys, and you can't use any monkey tower upgrades. So you start from around 25, 4,000 cash, and you only get 3 of each tower. So all the towers that are considered monkeys, you can't upgrade, and all the rest of the towers you can upgrade. So it was pretty easy, I guess, but of course, me being my noob cake self made way too many farms. Let's talk about the strategy just a little bit, and I'll talk about something interesting. I started off with just a couple of these pink little mofos right over here, and then basically just farmed up. I mean, my spike factory is basically my extra defense, so he defended for quite a while. And then, sadly, I lost quite a few lives on one of these levels, kind of reasonably early, like a noob cake. But it really wasn't that bad. I mean, just get a couple farms, get a couple not spike factories, a couple tack shooters and a spike factory, and you'll be set for a while. Just make sure you upgrade your spike factory by level 33, just to at least a 1-0. And, I mean, what I did was you should probably upgrade your spike factory up to 3-2. Kind of fast. I mean, mine, I didn't do it fast enough and it caused me to lose some lives. So yeah, you might want to do that instead of farming so heavy. Me being my total newbie self, farmed way too much and I had way too much money and I didn't have enough. And I shouldn't have lost those lives, guys. I shouldn't have. Anyways, that's really all for the strategy. Once you get a couple super monkeys, and your Monkey Town up to 4-0, you're pretty much set for the rest of the game. The Monkey Town is mainly for your Moab popping power, and then the cannons are basically your popping power. So that's really all you need. If you want to put your super monkeys and your Monkey Town on strong, and then your cannons either on first or close, whatever you prefer, and you'll be totally set. So you guys really liked my my star rant last time, so I guess I'll just talk about stars just a little bit more, and this time I'm just going to go over the life cycle, and I guess I'm just going to talk about stars over the next couple videos, and I'll just talk about them in a little bit more detail. And if you guys like this, just keep pressing the like button, I'll keep doing it. So the life cycle of a star, like I talked about in the last video, basically how a star forms and starts. I'm just going to repeat this, so I'm sorry if you guys don't want to hear it, but basically you have a bunch of gas and dust that starts coalescing from gravity, are forming together, getting bigger clumps, and eventually gets big enough or has enough gravity where it actually causes more stuff to fall into it. And eventually you get so much stuff in such a small amount of space because gravity keeps crushing it in that what happens is all the main gas, the hydrogen atoms, actually start fusing together. And once that happens, you get a star. And the equilibrium between the fusion pushing out, or like the energy pushing out and the gravity pushing in, is what actually makes a star. So now the life cycle of a star. After a star forms, what happens to it? Well, there's a couple different types of stars. That's the interesting thing about it. There's not just like, oh, this is what happens. No, there's like 3 or 4 different types of stars. There's like white dwarfs, there's like main sequence stars, or just dwarfs in general, main sequence stars, and then there's giants, and there's super giants. And they all pretty much go through a different life cycle, but it's somewhat similar. Basically what happens is you start off, most stars just start off fusing things together like hydrogen into helium. Some stars eventually run out of helium, or run out of hydrogen to fuse into helium, and what happens then? Well, here, let's talk about each separate one really fast, and then I'll try and go into just a little bit of detail, and if you guys want to hear even more, just let me know. First of all, let's just start off with a white dwarf, or like a dwarf star. Now these dwarf stars are usually like red or orange, but they turn white later in their life, or even main sequence stars, they turn white. But you have these dwarf stars which last roughly up to like 1 trillion years. They last a really long time, guys. You might think, oh, smaller stars, they should burn out faster. No, it's actually the opposite. Smaller stars actually take a really long time to burn out, while big stars actually burn out pretty fast. But these guys, they start off as a reasonably small star, and what happens is once they're done fusing all their hydrogen into helium, they basically just start dying off. And they slowly just release all their gases and stuff like that. They don't have anything that's really pushing out, so everything just starts getting crushed in by gravity. And when everything gets crushed in by gravity, it releases all this like stupid stuff like solar wind and all that. It just releases all this basically like the nonsensical things in the star that were held together by all the fusion and all the heat. So all these things pretty much fade off, and all the heat basically just slowly dissipates into nothing, and you're left with just a really, really dim white star that lasts for a long time. And that's a white dwarf. A main sequence star basically does the exact same thing. Once it runs out of hydrogen and helium, once it runs out of hydrogen, instead of just kind of dying off, what happens is it kind of like tries to survive. And when it tries to survive, what it does is it starts fusing your helium into stuff. So now, remember how I was saying, guys, that imagine one hydrogen atom is like one imaginary unit, and when you form helium, it's not two hydrogen atoms, it's like 1.99, and that's released as energy. Well, the exact same thing happens for higher atoms as well. So when helium forms into something like carbon or oxygen, that small amount of energy, or that small amount of mass that is lost, gets turned into energy. So what happens is these main sequence stars last for a really long time. They last for like 10 billion years, like our sun, roughly. And then once it runs out of hydrogen, it's like, oh crap, and it starts getting really, really compacted because there's nothing really pushing out. So what happens is it keeps getting crushed and crushed and crushed, and there's enough stuff in the star that what actually happens is those helium atoms get so crushed together that the helium atoms can actually start forming even heavier elements like oxygen and like carbon. And you can't do that in like a regular main sequence star because there's actually not enough energy and there's not enough pressure to actually form those elements. That's why it doesn't happen. You need higher pressures and higher amounts of heat to form these higher atoms. So what happens to these main sequence stars is they basically get gigantic. They get huge and red. For example, in our solar system, when the sun runs out of hydrogen and turns everything into helium, it's basically going to get gigantic. It's going to get as big as basically Earth. It's going to get huge, hundreds of times the size, thousands of times the size. I don't know the exact number. You know, maybe millions. I don't know. I don't think so, but probably just thousands of times the size. And then it just gets like big, and it's called a red giant. And when that red giant dies out, it just basically turns into a white dwarf again. It's basically the exact same life cycle, except for you have that red giant stage where it's actually making helium into carbon and oxygen. And I hope you guys liked this. If you do, please press the like button, and I will talk about the bigger stars and the better stars. And I think you guys want to know about supernova. If you do, press the like button, and I will talk about it in my next video. Thanks for watching, guys.